Well, welcome back everybody to another video. Today we're going to start the secondary planking that's going to go on the outside. We're going to be starting with the stern of the ship. Today the technique is the same we used for the decks, except we'll be using the darker wood sapele. So I've already kind of prepped the back here. I've sanded it all, and one thing to point out is when you're sanding the hull, when you get down here to where the rudder is going to fit on, you got to sand those whole planks down very, very thin. They're almost paper thin there. So the false keel that runs through is 5 millimeters wide. The planking that we're going to be using is 5 millimeters, and the rudder is. So you kind of want it to all funnel down to that width. Otherwise, it doesn't look quite right later on when the rudder gets put on there. So I'm going to be using some contact cement to adhere these planks. And it's pretty simple. Again, I think if you look back on the videos from doing the decks, it's the same thing. So I'm just going to paint the contact cement here onto the stern. And then I'll do it onto the planks. We'll give it a few minutes to cure, which is going to make it sticky. It gets very kind of rubbery and sticky. And then once the two pieces touch each other, they're pretty much they adhere to the point where it can be difficult to get them back apart. So you do have to watch and pay attention here to what you're doing when you're like very kind of carefully place these things down. Now, the technique I use is to just start with one end of the plank and slowly lay it down, because if you just drop the whole plank on there and it's in the wrong spot, you're going to have difficulty getting it back off. You just kind of lay it in there, and looks like I might need a new. I can use this one. I had stirred the contact cement with that little paintbrush, and now it's all sticky. The bristles are all stuck together, but that's just a disposable paintbrush. The last ship I did, I was used some good brushes and was washing them out and everything after every time I used them, and then I decided that it might just be easier to get a whole bag of disposable paintbrushes, so I can just chuck them when I'm done, especially doing things like this outer planking and using paintbrushes to spread this contact adhesive. So as you can see, I have a bunch of planks here spread out. I just use blue painter's tape to kind of just hold them down. You'll notice if you can see here in the video that the ends aren't cut straight on most of these. They're cut at a 45-degree angle. We're going to do a little like a herringbone pattern on the lower part here of the stern. I don't know if I actually have enough of these cut out yet of the right sizes, but yeah, so we'll see. Here as we go, I might need to cut some more. So I think these pieces have cured enough on here. So the first one I'm going to put on is just a straight plank here, and it's going to go right over where the false keel is. So you want to kind of just line it up there. Make sure it's centered up there, and you can see it's already strongly adhered. Just push it in, and that thing's not coming off. And then the next two here are going to be diagonal, and they're cut like I said, at a 45-degree angle. Thought I was putting it on backwards for a minute. Okay, and then this one will go same way on this side. Need to put a little more adhesive over the actual planks. I put it on the plywood, but I don't think I got it quite enough on the edge of the planks here. Brush some more on. So now we're just laying these in. We're making sure that we push each plank into the adjacent one. We don't want any gaps forming in there. This one will fit there. And you might see that some of the contact cement has come up, between these and is on top, but it actually sands off easy. It just turns into like a little rubber, and will sand right off. Like you can take something, piece of rounded wood or something like that. Also, periodically, I'm just using the back of this screwdriver and really push them together, so they make good contact, and they'll adhere really well. Okay, well, it looks like I'm coming up a little bit short on the number of planks. So I'm going to, you've seen and kind of get the idea here. I'm going to go cut a few more planks, put on here. I'll finish this up, and then we'll come back maybe after I trim the whole outside, um, trim all of these things off so we can kind of see what it looks like, and then we'll go on and do the other part of the stern. Okay, well, I've gone ahead. I've got this side all sanded down and trimmed up. So after we left, like I said, I cut a few more pieces, put some on here. Towards the top, there was like little tiny edges, so I cut basically one of the planks in half vertically and just glued it to either side of that. It was going to be not enough for it to grab onto, but to try to continue that herringbone pattern up. I think it's looking really good. Just wanted to talk a little bit about like how I'm uh, basically sanding and getting these things down. As some additional reinforcements, I went in behind along there and then just put really a bead of very thin CA that could just wick around the edges, kind of push everything in so that it all adheres really well. And then trying to use an X-Acto knife, or unless these things are sticking out really far, um, trying to sand them, you risk pulling everything off. So I just used, you probably saw already, just a set of clippers to kind of get them close, and then I'm coming in with a roto tool with just a disc drum or a sanding drum on it, and I'm getting really close. I thought about trying to film that, but I have to be where the camera is because you want to be able to see behind here and make sure that I'm not actually hitting the hull itself. So I'm stopping about a millimeter away from the hull and then going in and doing that last, little bit with hand sanding with sandpaper, starting with 150 and then kind of doing some 220 down there. And then when I get really close to the edge, you don't want any lip there. You want whatever that slope is that's coming down here to kind of continue as you go along the edge. So, because then when we start planking this part of the hole, it'll overlap what we just did here. You can see I already cut that notch back out on this side. I'll have to do that on there. So that's kind of how I'm finishing and getting around to this curved surface and getting it sanding in there. So you can see it's looking really good. Of course, the whole surface here itself will get sanded. At the same time, I do the rest of the hole after the second planking goes everything. I do a fine sanding with I usually start with about 220 on that and go all the way up to 800. Do like 220, 400, then 800 grid and get it really, really smooth before we put any sort of varnish on there. There'll be a few more steps actually to the hole before we varnish it. So even though I'll sand it and get it down, we're not going to varnish it for a little while yet. So let me go ahead and finish doing this other side, and then we'll come back and do the remainder of the stern. Okay, we have both sides done here. I did actually a quick sand over it, so it's actually pretty smooth, but I'll probably go over it again when I do the whole rest of the hole. I just couldn't resist myself. I wanted to see just kind of like how this was going to turn out. It's the first of the outer planking. So, but everything looks great. I've gone and prepped down here a little bit. We actually don't need to do up here. That's all going to be hidden anyway. I did put some filler in just to kind of make it even so that as these planks run across here, there's not a little low spot or anything, just to kind of even it out. Gave this area a whole nice sanding, and then drew a vertical line down the middle just to help make sure that the planks are perfectly vertical, and then we'll just work kind of from the inside out on this. So let me go ahead and get set, and we'll cut some planks and start putting them here. All right, so our planks have been all covered in the adhesive and are ready to be attached. I'll just cut through that one kind of as a mark to where that little slot is. Okay, well, I've got all of the planks on here. Now I'm going to let this sit just for a little bit, and I'm going to come in here, trim all those, basically do the same thing that I did up here. Use some nippers to get them close, and then use the roto tool to get them in. I'll probably reinforce, especially in this area here where I've got to cut out that little hole. Put some CA in behind these small parts that are going to be kind of just tacked onto that little section there. I don't think this contact cement over that small of an area is good enough to hold them into place. Anyway, so like I said, I'll turn the camera off, get all of that done and cleaned up. We'll come back in and look at the final results. Well, we're done doing the stern, both the upper and lower part. You can see did the same process, sanded it all down. It's looking really good. Did a quick sand over the top of it. It's going to need some more sanding to get ready for the varnishing and stuff. But like I said, the varnishing's way off yet. So I think I'm really happy with the way the stern came out here. So before we can start the sides, let me just flip the ship around. There's a little small section here on the bow that we're going to do. That's where the bowsprit comes out, and the little front here. So it's going to be the same thing. The sepally, it's going to be vertical, planking that runs across the top, and then we'll start on the side. So where I think I'm going to end this video. I mean, I don't think there's any point in filming this part. It's kind of repetitive to what was on the back. It's just the same process. So if you like what you're seeing, please like, subscribe, and comment, and thank you for watching.